cool though.
Micro movements. Can I
That's
talk
true.
now? Are we live?
I left you hanging there. All right. I think we are live on YouTube and live here in the Zoom room. And we are pretty excited to be doing our next mini class on micro movements. Louise, do you want to kick us off?
I do. I love this topic. I think it's so important, and I'm really glad everyone's here to chat just for a few minutes because that's what this is all about. Just a few clips, snips, trips, ticks,
What are you trying to say?
tips, and tricks.
There you go.
Trying to say. So thanks everyone for joining us today. I want to acknowledge just before we get started that I live, work, and play on Treaty One territory here on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene people. And I am here on the national homeland of the Red River Métis in the heart of Turtle Island. So thanks so much, everyone. Kim, I'm going to throw it back to you for a second.
Every time you say Turtle Island, it makes me smile.
I
It
know,
just
right?
does. It feels so good. So, I am hosting today from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Ganyangahaga. Colonially, I always trip over that word. There's some psychosomatic stuff for you.
Ooh.
Uh, Known as the island of Montreal, a place which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst nations. So we are also, we want to let you know that we created this space. We're using a new term. So if you've been around for a while, you might not have heard us use this term, but we blended several of the things that we do together under this umbrella called the Inspirize Network. So think of like in being inspirized or inspirizing others or rise well and being inspired. All the things. We want all the things there. So the Inspirize Network, which we created as a place for people to come together and craft and develop work that works for them, right? Work shouldn't suck. Whether you are an employee or a business owner, an entrepreneur, or something in between, under this umbrella of Inspirize, you are going to find the Kickass Career Collective, which we've talked about a lot in the past, which includes courses, coaching, mastermind sessions, and so much more. We also do the weekly live stream podcast called Kickass Career Conversations, which you can find on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and you can always catch the replay wherever you listen to podcasts. So let's get down to the meat of it because that was 4 minutes into our 25 minutes. So
Well, I love it because like as you were talking, I'm like, yeah, I'm inspired, but I'm also like, here I am like doing movements, right? And that's what we're here to talk about today. We all know the research is endless out there about how physical activity actually brings something to our lives, right? It brings clarity, mental acuity, all of these things. But we can get so busy in our day that we've either forget to do it or we think that we have to carve out like these huge amounts of time to be doing a practice, and that feels daunting sometimes. We all know, and science proves it, that actually our micro movements that we have throughout the day have a compound effect. So you don't have to be doing something for 20, 25, 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever that is. We get to kind of add on to it as we go throughout our day.
yeah, absolutely. And so what I love about this conversation is that I COVID. We all COVID, right? Like we all went
We all cope.
through we all COVID. We all went through the pandemic. Um well, I loved and still do love the ability to work from home. I wasn't moving as much. A lot of us weren't moving as much. Some of us went gangbusters, right? This probably isn't what they're struggling with. But for those of us that didn't move as much, I was going from an average of about 13 to 15,000 steps a day down to 3,000 steps a day. So it was a significant change. I know it's painful just to think about it. And I continued to be at that like 3,000 steps a day for a long time. I decided I needed to make a change and I wanted to incorporate actually more yoga into my day because I needed the flexibility and the mobility. That's what really felt like had taken a hit, even though I wasn't getting the steps in the cardio and all that. So I started just with 5 minutes a day. I made myself a promise. I was like, 5 minutes a day. That's all I need you to do is 5 minutes a day. And then after I had set up that habit of doing 5 minutes a day, I extended that time to 10 minutes a day. And then a while later, I extended it to 20. And then I got up to doing 30 minutes a day. And now I regularly do around 30 minutes, sometimes even longer, much longer on the weekends, where I'm doing it every day because I created the habit. On those days where it's like, I just can't fit that into my schedule today. I don't feel like I can fit that into my schedule. I go back and I say, do you have 15 minutes? Can you just squeeze in a little bit? Do you have 5 minutes? And I always can find 5 minutes. And so that's where, right, that compound effect, I noticed significant change in my body over a relatively short period of time just by having that consistency of doing it just a little bit each day. What about you, Louise? How has that shown up for you?
Well, before I get there, I want to know, like, you notice that physical difference. What about like that your mental? Did you notice anything that changed for you mentally as you were approaching your day?
Yeah, I mean, I had had a practice of meditation that I hadn't let go of. So adding the physical part of yoga, um, well, I had already had that grounding, right? So going from that place, I had already had that grounding. But what it gave to me mentally, emotionally, is that I can do this, right? It's more of the I am taking care of myself. My ability to lean into wellness grew from there. So I was making different decisions throughout the day. I will fully own that there are some days where I get up from my desk and I'm creaky and I'm like, ooh, what is that? I now have a new habit that I can go back to and say, okay, I just need to start with 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's where the mental part of it went into. It was less about the mindfulness and the mindset of being grounded and more of this. I can do it. I can step into it. This is who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what I found too. So I know like just this last summer, I was really struggling. So I had knee replacement surgery, and then I get this long list of physio exercises that I need to do at home. And I need to do it, I should be doing it 3 to 4 times a day. And I looked at that list and I was like, well, where the heck am I finding the time to be doing all of those things all of the time when I work and all of that other stuff, right? And so I got some really great advice, actually not from my physio, but from another healthcare practitioner that challenged me to look at it more like if this was my job, if this was my not just my physio, but how do I work this in like it was any other kind of task or to do on my list? And it was my job to do. And I started to look at it to say, like, if I had this really big project that I was working on, right? I wasn't going to finish it all in one go. How do I kind of break that down into kind of more manageable things? And so I started doing my physio exercises in all kinds of places. I was doing them at my desk. I was doing them while my coffee was heating up. I was doing them while my toast was toasting or whatever that looked like, right? Even playing with the dog for a few minutes every day became part of my physio. I started to work in and be really intentional about the exercises that I was doing. And then before I knew it, I'd actually completed those exercises and it didn't feel laborious. It didn't feel like it was taking me away or that I had to, right? Of course, I want to. I want to improve my health, my mobility, my flexibility. But it kind of took that pressure off. And I really found it so much more enjoyable when I could work these things in and get my kid to help me out or whatever that looked like. So it was, for me, it was, yeah, I'm doing these physical things, but it was this whole mental kind of switch that I had on how am I tackling this? We all know physical activity is good for us, and we still struggle. We could be struggling,
We
but we
struggle along.
to work it into our day.
There was a word that you used in there, intentional.
Mm,
And I think with all of these mini classes, with all of these micro things that we can do, I think that's the word it comes down to, right? It's that intentionality. I intentionally set out to be more connected to my body, to regain some mobility and some flexibility. That was why I chose yoga. Now, that has led to creating new habits in other ways, right? So now I have a giant yoga ball that half the time lives here in my office and half the time lives in the family room. And the way I use it is very intentional. So I use it during the day. I'll have it here in my office and I'll use it during the day to swivel around on my hips because my hips lock up
right.
because of how I sit. I don't always have the greatest posture. I'm going to own it. I then have it in the family room. So I have an opportunity to do structural work, ab work, back work while we're watching TV. But it's again, it's being intentional and it's not saying I have to go be at the gym for 2 to 3 hours a day. I would love it if that my life was set up that way. My life isn't always set up that way. So that isn't always an opportunity. In fact, it's rarely an opportunity for me. So that's where these micro movements have been so impactful, making really big changes. I mean, there are things that I can do now that I couldn't do 3 months ago, and things 3 months ago I couldn't do 3 months before that. So it's just continuing with these little micro movements.
Yeah.
I mentioned posture. What do you have some wisdom on posture and how we can, because that deals with movement too during the day, doesn't it?
It does, right? It brings back that word intentionality. We can often, right? We get so hunched over and tight in our, well, all those places we hold stress, right? Some for the jaw, the neck, the shoulders, but we get all hunchy and crunchy. It wasn't actually not that long ago. I don't know if you remember, I got this really bad pain in my neck, and I couldn't even, like, I was one of these kind of people because I couldn't even turn. And it was all because of my posture and how I was sitting at my desk. And so that reminded me, right? When we can stack our shoulders back over our hips and we actually put our feet flat on the floor, not tucked under our chair. Everybody who's just watching this who moved their feet right now. Um, right? And making sure our ankles are under our knees and just doing that a few times a day, checking in, being intentional. Whenever you take a sip of coffee or a drink of water or you touch your glasses and right, anything can trigger that reminder, that intentionality. And that's what we're talking about movement, right? Because now we're talking about flow, energy flow, blood flow, and all of those things that help us in that. So, Kim, let's dive in real quick. We have a quick little kind of game. I don't know if it was a game. Yeah, I think it's a game.
It
We
feels like
like
a game.
a game because we're on virtual meetings so often. We have a list of exercises you can actually do in a meeting, and barely anyone will pay attention or notice that you're actually stretching. So we did this. So let's go through a few exercises, and I'll put this in the chat, and I think this will then appear on the live if anyone's rewatching it, or maybe even in the live. I don't know how this works. Are people going
We'll
to?
put it in the notes over on YouTube. No worries. We got you.
Okay. So let's do this. So you start. Give me an exercise and let's see if we can do it together.
Okay, so the first one is a knee extension. This is to strengthen our quadriceps and our core. So what we want to do here is not be all the way back in our chair. We actually want to come a little bit more forward in our chair. And again, with that good posture where our shoulders are aligned over our hips, our knees are bent. My bad habit is that my feet are always back behind me. So actually bringing your feet so they're in alignment under your knees. And then lift your right knee, keeping your right leg lifted, extend it out, bend it back, and then set it on the floor. Then lift your left leg, extend it out, bend it back, and set it on the floor. So now imagine doing 15 of those, right? Now, in a Zoom meeting, you might not be keeping track of how many you're doing. You might just be doing it, but being able to engage your core as you're lifting, right? Don't be like Kim. Don't use your hip flexors when you lift your leg, because that's my bad habit. Use your actual core as you lift and extend, and then that's going to strengthen all of that.
Ooh, I love that. And we were both doing it, and you couldn't really tell. I was watching really close. Um, as long as I didn't hit my garbage can when I extended my.
You might need to change some things under your desk.
Another one to do with the legs. I think there's two here. We can kind of do them at the same time, and that's calf raises, right? And so that's where your feet are flat on the floor, same alignment that Kim just mentioned, and that you're just raising your heels off the ground, just so that your tiptoes touch the floor. Again, like you can engage the core because that's like a little ab work going on there
Mhm.
too. The other one is you can rock back and forth by lifting your toes and keeping your heels flat on the floor, right? And so the heels can go up and engage the core, but also the toes can go up and engage the core. And you can feel that in the front and the back of your calves.
So, my feet have always been an issue. Like I have always been an issue for me. So the toe lifts are huge. And one of the tricks with that is, right, if you can lift all of them up and then set all of them down, but then practice just lifting one toe at a time. That or your big one and then the other four. I do it all the time because I do have problems with my feet. It helps with circulation, but it also helps with flexibility and mobility.
Even tensing all your muscles in your feet, right? Like you can kind of pull, you can feel how your arch kind of pulls up, especially, when you're a little bit older.
Ah. Or if you've carried a baby,
Yes.
or if you're carrying a little extra weight.
That's also another good one to do with
Yeah.
your feet. What?
So this one is a little harder to not be seen. They might just be wondering what you're doing. So this one is with your legs out already, right? So this one is for your thighs. Um, you might get your heart rate up a little bit on this one too. So your legs are out extended in front of you, and then lift them up. Lift up your left leg and pull it over your right leg. Bring your left leg back into place, so in alignment. So what you're doing is you're doing this. You're opening, going over. You're opening and going over, and opening and go. Yeah.
I'm liking
So
use the fingers.
that was that to help you out a little bit there. So that's what you're doing with that one is it's scissor kicking, not this kind of scissor kicking, but this kind of scissor kicking. And yeah, that one will get you going a little bit. Yeah. So try that. Maybe have your camera off for that one.
Just for a minute or two. That's all.
Louise, do we have anything for our upper body? Because there was a lot of our feet and our legs. Do we have anything for our upper body?
Yeah, I mean, you can do arm curls as well without folks really seeing that. You can actually challenge yourself, right? Because it's about the tension that you have in your arms as you're doing the curls. And so it doesn't have to be this like big monstrous movement. It can be just these tiny little curls or these little like almost like these tricep curls, right? So your shoulders are back, your elbows are tucked in close to your body, and now you're bringing your hands up.
So it's not doing this, it's doing that.
Yeah, but it's pretending like you're resisting, right? Like
Yeah.
you're stuck in the cement and you're resisting up and you're resisting down because those movements don't have to be huge, but you're kind of like really engaging all of your muscles and your core too.
Yep.
So
All I think with all of these, right? That tightening up our abs and remembering to just kind of tighten it up a little bit without holding your breath, right? We don't have to suck ourselves in. It's not making ourselves smaller. It's just kind of flexing the muscles in our abdominal wall.
yes,
Um,
and don't forget these things too, right?
yeah.
Fingers, all of this stuff, all of this movement, some stretching. Now you can be doing this right before a meeting, after a meeting, as you're waiting, but you can even do it under the camera screen too.
Yeah.
You can be doing things to do that as well.
Yeah. And then the figure four. right? So people usually know this. So if you cross your ankle over your knee,
Your right ankle over your
right
left.
over your left knee, you make kind of a four shape. And that will stretch your hip. That one, you do have to move your body around a little bit, but most people aren't bothered by that. Maybe don't do it in a job interview.
Just saying. And this is, of course, while you're actively listening and paying attention to the
Yes.
meeting, because that's why you're there in the first place. So we don't want to take away from that. But we're just trying to work on how to get a little bit more movement, how to be a little bit fun while you're doing this. And sometimes we have that space in those meetings in order to do some of those things.
And I
So,
actually love doing these things when I'm doing data work, even more than
mm,
meetings. Like if I'm
yes.
doing data work and I'm working out, I'm like, woo, that's a win-win.
Oh
All right.
yeah, and then we're doing stretch it. I'm doing all kinds of things, especially I hold so much tension and stress in my jaw, my neck, and my
Mm,
shoulders, is that I'm like really intentionally paying attention to where that stress lives in my body, and shaking it out a couple of
yep.
times a day.
Yep. Absolutely. So we hope that this was helpful, right? We have 3 minutes before we're going to sign off, and we want to just make sure that you know that our next mini class series, our next mini class is going to be on taking micro actions for macro results in the way of micro feedback. So Louise, do you want to just give a little tease in terms of what micro feedback? Because sometimes we are solopreneurs. Why do we need micro feedback?
We all need feedback,
Oh, do we?
data.
Oh, you're right. We do need data. Doesn't matter what we're
Mhm.
doing for work. We need
Right.
it.
Absolutely. So finding ways to get really great feedback, how to be really good at asking for feedback, and then how to be really good at delivering feedback. Feedback
Mm.
doesn't have to be this big, monstrous thing where, right, if you're at work and you're a leader, you're gonna be pulling people into the office to give them feedback. I mean, there's a time and a place for that kind of feedback, but how do we work more feedback into our lives? How do we actually get the feedback that we need? As a solopreneur, what are we doing as well to make sure that we are in alignment with what we're putting out in the world? That all looks like. And so we will be talking about that, like Kim said, in 2 weeks on the 8th.
Yep, February 8th.
Yeah, so fantastic. We also want to do a great big invite to everybody into our new Inspire network. So it is free for you all to check out. So please do so, and be inspired, because that's what it's all about, right? How to be more connected, and love the work that you do for a paycheck.
Absolutely. And I dropped that in the link for those that are live in the Zoom room, and I'll make sure that it is in the show notes for the mini class over on YouTube. So excited to have you join us today. Look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks when we start talking about microfeedback and hopefully in the Inspire Eyes Network. Thanks, everyone. Look at that.
It's like
25
that.
minutes in and done. Bye, everyone.